Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My best friend Sarah made some questionable choices last month. She sent some risque pictures to a guy she thought she could trust. All she knew about him was his first name, Jake, his social media handle at Traveling Jake, and that he lived somewhere in Canada and worked in tech sales. Jake had told Sarah he'd be in town for a conference next week, and they'd made plans to meet up. But when Sarah noticed some red flags in their conversations, she decided to cancel. That's when Jake showed his true colors. "Cancel on me? Fine, I'll just share these pics with the world," he messaged her. Sarah called me in tears. "Alex, I don't know what to do. He's threatening to post my pictures online. I'm an attorney and I wasn't about to let this slide." "Don't worry, Sarah, I've got this," I told her. I dove into research mode, using every picture Jake had sent Sarah that could possibly identify him. His TikTok handle led me to an Instagram page with his full name. From there, I found his LinkedIn profile, which matched a photo he'd sent wearing a company-branded polo. A few more searches, and I had the email addresses for Jake's CEO, VP of HR, Operations Manager, and PR Manager. I drafted an email. "Dear Sir, Madam, I'm writing on behalf of my client regarding a serious matter involving one of your employees." I attached screenshots of Jake's threats, snippets of their conversations showing his username, and the photo of him in company gear. I included links detailing how I'd identified him, along with pictures he'd sent of his motorcycle, license plate visible. But I didn't stop there. I added screenshots of Jake discussing a workplace incident, complete with timestamps. There were bits of dialogue where he bragged about having sex with an ex at work and plans to do the same in his office. The coup de grace? A picture Jake had sent showing his work laptop displaying his entire Outlook calendar and some clearly confidential information. He'd sent it to prove he was busy, but now it was proof of his idiocy. I informed his employer that I'd be forwarding all this information to their local law enforcement. Since Jake had plans to travel to the US soon, I mentioned I'd also be contacting the FBI. After all, threatening a US citizen on US soil with revenge porn is a federal crime. Should you proceed with Mr. Jake's employment and his upcoming U.S. trip, please be advised that federal law enforcement will be waiting for him upon arrival, I wrote. And I meant it. One of the assistant U.S. attorneys in our district is an old law school buddy of mine. I ended the email with a promise to contact Jake's local authorities the next day, since I had his license plate number and knew where he lived. As I hit send, I couldn't help but smirk. "You thought you were so clever, hiding behind a screen name," I muttered. "It took me less than an hour to unravel your entire life, you dumb bastard," I called Sarah to update her. "It's done," I said. "Jake won't be a problem anymore." "Alex, I can't thank you enough," Sarah replied, relief evident in her voice. "What would I do without you?" I chuckled. "Let's hope you never have to find out. And Sarah, next time, maybe be a bit more careful about who you trust with sensitive photos, okay?" "Lesson learned," she said. "Believe me, lesson learned." The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd end up in a feud with my neighbor, but here I am. It all started when Karen moved in next door about a year ago. At first, she seemed nice enough, always waving and smiling when we saw each other outside. But it didn't take long for her true colors to show. You see, I live on a pretty big piece of land, about 10 acres total. My house is towards the front of the property near the road, and the rest is mostly wooded with a small cleared area in the back where I like to go camping sometimes. Karen's house is right next to mine, but on a much smaller lot. A few months after Karen moved in, I noticed she had started using the cleared area in my backyard. At first it was just little things. I'd see her back there reading a book or doing yoga. I didn't really mind, so I let it slide, but then she started bringing friends over for picnics and setting up lawn games. That's when I decided I needed to say something. One Saturday morning, I saw Karen and a group of her friends heading towards my backyard with a bunch of picnic supplies. I walked over to talk to her. "Hey, Karen," I called out. "I don't mean to be a bother, but I noticed you've been using my backyard a lot lately. I don't mind you being back there occasionally, but I'd appreciate it if you asked first before bringing a whole group over." Karen looked at me like I had two heads. "What are you talking about? This is public land. Anyone can use it." I was confused. "No, this is actually my property. It goes all the way back to the tree line about a quarter-mile that way," I said, pointing. Karen rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. Your property ends at your fence line. This area is for everyone in the neighborhood to use." Now, I should mention that I don't actually have a fence. The property line between our houses is marked by a row of bushes. I tried explaining this to Karen, but she wasn't having it. "Listen," she snapped. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but this land doesn't belong to you. Now, if you'll excuse me, my friends and I have a picnic to enjoy." With that, she turned on her heel and marched off towards the clearing, her confused-looking friends trailing behind her. I was pretty annoyed, but I decided to let it go for the time being. I figured I'd dig out my property documents later and show them to Karen to clear things up. But over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Karen started treating my backyard like her own personal park. She had people over almost every day. They'd leave trash everywhere, and I even caught some kids trying to cut down small trees to use for firewood. When I confronted Karen about it, she just kept insisting it was public land and there was nothing I could do about it. The final straw came when I went out one morning to find Karen had set up a goddamn above-ground pool in my clearing. That's when I knew I had to take action. I went to the county records office and got copies of all my property documents, including a detailed survey map. Then I called Karen and asked her to meet me outside. When she came out, I tried to calmly explain the situation. I showed her the documents proving I owned all the land, including the area she'd been using. I told her I'd been patient, but she needed to take down the pool and stop using my property without permission. Karen's face turned beet red. "These documents are obviously fake," she screeched. "I'm calling a real surveyor to prove once and for all that this land is public." "Fine by me," I said with a shrug. I knew I was in the right, so I had nothing to worry about. A few days later, the surveyor Karen hired showed up. He did a thorough survey of both our properties. Want to guess what he found? Yep, the land was mine, exactly as my documents showed. The look on Karen's face when the surveyor confirmed this was priceless. But it gets better. While talking to the surveyor, I learned something interesting. Apparently, when he was measuring Karen's property, he discovered that her house actually extended about 3 feet over her property line onto my land. Technically, this meant she was illegally occupying part of my property. Now, if Karen had been reasonable from the start, I would have been happy to work out some kind of easement to let her keep her house as is. But after all the hassle she'd put me through, I decided to play hardball. I took the surveyor's report to a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against Karen for illegal occupation of my land. I also reported the code violation to the county. Karen tried to fight it, but the evidence was clear. The judge ruled in my favor and gave Karen 2 options: either pay to have her house physically moved back onto her property line, or sell the house to me at a steep discount so I could deal with the issue myself. Karen couldn't afford to move the house, so in the end she had no choice but to sell to me at about 60% of the property's market value. I turned around and sold it a month later for full price, making a tidy profit. Last I heard, Karen had moved in with her sister in another state. As for me, I used some of the money from selling her house to put up a nice fence around my entire property. Now I can enjoy my land in peace without any entitled neighbors trying to claim it as their own. The moral of the story? Don't mess with someone else's property. And always know exactly where your property lines are. It might just save you from losing your house to your neighbor. The next one is a petty revenge story. Our Karen neighbor complained about another neighbor's motorcycle. It's a stock bike, so he didn't add any loud muffles. And prior to this, he was very respectful. He would start the bike and drive conservatively out of the neighborhood. But then enters Karen. Karen complains about everything and everyone knows her. She has complained several times about the motorcycle and calls the cops frequently for dumb things. This time she decides to go too far and tries to prevent the motorcycle from leaving the neighborhood. She nearly ran him over. So now, because Karen literally tried to murder someone, the motorcycle rider starts his motorcycle a few times a day, rides to Karen's house a couple houses down, revs his engine for a few minutes, then speeds away in the most obnoxious way possible. He's even had some of his buddies come by in a sort of duck you Karen parade. I talk to him, we know each other, and he's a decent dude, and he at least agrees to stop doing this at night and to ride safely since there are a lot of kids in the area. I honestly can't blame him at all because everybody hates this idiot and she deserves much worse considering what she did. I just wish there was a legal way to get her to stop being such an idiot. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I am an administrator for an institution that works in the public sector. The hierarchy of this structure is slightly complicated because of the nature of the job, criminal justice. I oversee around 20 employees. Those employees are supervised by 4 individuals with rank for 4 different shifts. Each supervisor has another ranked, lesser person to assist them, so basically each shift has a primary and secondary supervisor. They all report to one individual who ranks beneath me, and I oversee all of them. I report to the individual in charge of the whole institution, and that person reports to an elected official who manages the entire department. The tricky part is the department has 2 divisions, and while this elected official oversees all of it, they really only run the other division. We have an employee who is very intelligent. However, his book smart is vast, and his actual experience in this line of work is minimal. He is a ranked assistant on one shift, so he works with a supervisor of one shift. He sends weekly emails complaining about all the other shifts and their mess-ups. He will write down everything from someone forgetting to remove trash, to someone making an error on a form, or even someone interpreting a directive differently than him. He makes it clear that his way is the correct way, and anyone not doing things his way should be written up. He shouts accountability constantly or sends condescending emails after a directive is put in place, usually because someone messed up, and advises me to, "You need to speak directly with the individual that caused this change, otherwise they won't have a clue it's because of them." Basically telling me and the head administrator how we should be doing our jobs. He targets employees and complains about them demanding demotion and accountability and badmouths us for doing nothing about poor performance. Meanwhile, I have submitted multiple demotion requests and write-ups to HR for accountability, but the union steps in and dismisses many of them. This individual does not know or see any of this because personnel issues are not open discussions and it really isn't his business what discipline is put in place. But it's being done, he just does not see it or hear about it to protect the privacy of that employee. Recently, he has started attacking a shift supervisor on the opposite shift. Anytime something is off, he sends an email with her opus accusations to that supervisor, all of which turn out to not even be true, or from that shift to begin with. He ranted about how he never sees the administrators, and in order to run a good facility, administrators need to be visible and involved on every shift, even citing it's not that hard to come in late and stay late to speak to your employees, basically telling us how we should be doing our jobs. He wants monthly supervisor meetings instead of quarterly, because this will eliminate misunderstandings of directives that the other shifts are doing wrong. Little does he know we had monthly meetings for a long time, and no one was able to make them, and nothing came of the meetings, so they requested quarterly meetings. I agree that visibility is important, and I stop in twice a month with night shift to check in and see day shift every day, but he never gets up to come speak to me during my rounds. He sits and reads or plays on his phone, which is allowed due to the nature of the job. He commented, "I can't recall the last time I saw any of you," demanding that admins come in more to micromanage better. I was in a week prior, so that kinda upset me as he won't acknowledge me. So I started coming in more and told him, "Why are you sitting? You should be managing. There are things to be cleaned and sorted. You can count inventory of supplies. We don't pay you to sit around." This upset him because we do pay them to sit around until needed, if they have an intake. I then asked him why he was sitting in a restricted area. He stated it was quiet in there and common sense shows he's not violating the rule because he didn't go past a specific point so he can sit there. It's a corridor leading to another part of the building not owned by us. I read him the directive, which states, "At no point should anyone for any reason go beyond this door unless in an emergency evacuation situation." I asked him again what was so difficult to understand about this request. He still found nothing wrong with going past the door to sit on the other side. I told him he has demanded accountability, so he would be getting a write-up for not following the directive. He flipped out, saying it was such a minor thing, and reminded him of all the little minor things he complains about with the other shifts. I continued to come in and micromanage everyone. A few employees asked why I was there all the time because we hired supervisors to manage the shift, so did we not think they were capable of doing the job? I advised that some people felt that they couldn't manage the shift and wanted administrators to come in more. The complaining individual got several more write-ups, one major one for an almost fireable offense, showing that maybe in fact he didn't have all the answers. He sent an email to my supervisor complaining that I was micromanaging and being extremely anal with the minor write-up infractions that he now says aren't that big to even be reprimanded for. My supervisor asked, "But this is what you wanted, is it not? You complained that you wanted us to be seen and manage more and hold people accountable when they mess up." The complaining individual wanted other people written up, but not himself because he was never wrong, or that's what he implied. I went back to my regular twice-a-month check-in, which is just stopping in to see how things are going on the shift. The complainer has been quiet for now, sitting inside the allowable room, reading. His superiority complex will be his downfall. I remind him that the newest employees are the ones we can learn the most from, and he needs to value knowledge he can get from anyone, regardless of their experience or rank status. I'm an administrator, and I tell staff I am always learning and will continue to learn from everyone. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Hello, my previous job had me working as a food service worker in a bakery. I worked at a certain berry-themed amusement park, and I worked there for about 2 years before quitting a few months back for a job that pays me better. I liked the job for the most part. Most people were cool, and I really only encountered difficult people during busy seasons. And my co-workers, with the exception of 2 who hated me, had my during these encounters. We were also right next to the park's security office. The way my location was set up was a little bit weird and specific. It was a bakery with 3 massive display cases separating us as the employees from the customers, 2 registers between the display cases and our soda machine, and a little nook off to the side. In this nook, there were 3 machines. A massive coffee pot, a hot chocolate machine that was just a little broken and always messy, despite my best efforts to keep it clean, and a run-down little latte machine. There's a counter right next to this machine where the coffees and stuff would be called out. There was also 2 registers set up outside at this time because it was busy season, and this was the most efficient way for us as employees to serve customers. There was almost always 1 or 2 people on the register outside, and this time it was my team lead, basically a mini manager, who really liked me because I trained him. This happened on my last day there. This park has a drink program where anybody with the annual pass could pay an extra $10 or so and redeem a free fountain drink every 15 minutes. People who weren't pass holders also could get the drink program by buying a souvenir bottle for like $30 that they could use throughout the day and reactivate if they came on a different day. A lot of people with this drink program tended to feel like they didn't need to wait in lines for their drink redemption, and it was common for them to walk up to the other side of the counter and ask for their refill. And usually they were annoyed but never malicious when I or one of my coworkers told them that they unfortunately had to wait in line for drinks, as many people in line were also just getting drinks. Not this lady, though. Oh no. This lady was out for blood, and she must have sensed that I was in a good mood. It was the last hour and a half of my final shift. Elle was busy cleaning up a couple of messes that had been made throughout the day by the hot chocolate and latte machines, and was simultaneously talking to my managers and other leads about my plans for the future, about where I pick up my last check, etc., etc. Suddenly, I heard somebody unscrewing the lids off their cups and pushing them towards me. This woman was a little taller than me. I'm 5'3", had sunglasses and a baseball cap on, and didn't look very pleasant. You develop a sixth sense for difficult people when working for theme parks, you see. She had 2 souvenir bottles on the counter and was holding them out to me. I smiled at her and told her, "Oh, I'm sorry, you actually have to wait in line to get refills. I know it's inconvenient, but it's park policy." She scoffed at me and said, "I'm just getting drinks," and I reiterated that she still had to wait in line, adding that even though the line was really long right now, there were other people in it who were also just getting drinks. So she disappears, and I assume that she'd gone to wait in the admittedly pretty long line. In that time, I finished cleaning the machines and returned to helping customers in line with my other coworkers. About 5 minutes pass, and this lady comes storming back in, cutting the line again and walking up to the register. She pointed at me and said, "You!" It's important to note here that I am mixed race, but look white, and am usually perceived as white because TBH, I didn't go outside much at this time, and have only recently started getting my darker color back. This woman was black, and most of my coworkers are POC. I'm also autistic with low support needs. I'm just a little awkward and anxious, fidgety, and have trouble making eye contact despite my best efforts. So I'm sure that had something to do with why this lady locked onto me and not my other neurotypical co-workers. She kept yelling at me saying, "You're a racist little idiot, aren't you? You lied to me because I'm black. I wasted all that time in line and your manager told me that you lied to me. You did this because I'm black, didn't you?" I, as any reasonable person would be, was startled. I had been trained for conflicts like this because I was supposed to be a team lead before management changed, and I was usually the person to deal with customers like her for that exact reason. This was partially why I quit. Regardless, this was my first time being cussed at by a customer in a malicious way. I said, "I'm sorry about that, but I didn't lie to you. I can get you your drinks, though." So she basically threw her cups at me and said, "I want Coke and Diet Coke." I gave her those and handed her back the cups one by one, telling her which was which. She promptly scoffed and said, "You didn't put them in the right cups, are you stupid?" And she pushed the cups back at me. I had enough at that point and asked one of my friends to take over for me as I went to go talk to my lead outside. I went out there and told him about the lady, and he informed me that he did not, in fact, tell her to cut the line. He said that he scanned her drink pass and told her to just wait for one of us behind the counter to help her, and we'd get to her as soon as possible. I told him about her insults to me, and just like that, boom, she appeared behind me. This woman had followed me outside and started berating me in front of my lead and hundreds of customers, one again calling me a racist little idiot and saying that I hated black people, that I was a lazy piece of crap, that I didn't know how to do my job, and that I had no right to be standing there and doing duck all when the line was out the door. My lead stood up for me, and I'd finally just told her, "It's my last day, you can't talk to me that way," and walked away. She didn't follow me again. And even though I had kept my cool for the entirety of the interaction, it hit me all at once and I had a small meltdown in the bakery's storage room. My coworkers, now friends, were very understanding and let me take my time, and thankfully this woman did not ruin my day. I don't miss that job. Seriously, man, if you're gonna go to a theme park, please be nice to the workers. I can tell you from experience that most parks are single-handedly run by teenagers, and unless it's a big park like the one I currently work at, management is in their early to mid-20s and corporate doesn't care about us. Be nice, please. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.